Welcome to the first episode of Tactica, where I'll be covering some of the more advanced tactics and strategies for Warhammer 40k armies and units. This week, the Thunderfire Cannon. Why the Thunderfire Cannon? Because with the release of the Space Wolves, the Blood Angels, and the Grey Knights, the Thunderfire Cannon remains one of the two basic units that are the sole reserve of Codex Space Marines. The other being the Landspeeder Storm, which I will be covering next week. The Thunderfire Cannon is an artillery unit with only one piece of artillery and one crew member. What makes this unit special is that the crew member is a tech marine with servo harness. His 2+ save protects him from the majority of incoming fire, and he also comes with bolstered terrain, which can be used to grant him and other marine units extra protection in the ruin. He also possesses the standard Blessing of the Omniessa rules and independent character rules, but he cannot use them unless the cannon he is with is destroyed. The unit as a whole is fairly cheap at 100 points, its main drawback being that it's incredibly fragile. Though shooting at an artillery unit randomizes the hits between both the cannon and the crew, the single cannon only counts as armor 10, and any glancing hits against it will automatically destroy it. This effectively makes it like a toughness 6 model with no save and extremely vulnerable outside of cover. The Thunderfire Cannon only has one option available to it, a drop pod transport. This will only be really useful in one mission scenario, Dawn of War, where you need to get the cannon onto terrain as soon as possible. Even then, the random scatter of the drop pod makes this risky, and it adds an extra kill point to your army as well. The drop pod can be used as a separate deep strike unit though, with a locator beacon upgraded for it at a total of 45 points. This can be useful if you've got an army with a lot of deep strike components built around it. If not, I would say ignore this option. The Thunderfire Cannon is ideally deployed in bolstered ruins to give it the extra durability that it sorely needs. This requires some ruins in your deployment zone in the first place for you to bolster, so it's dependent on your local terrain. In the case of Dawn of War, with the artillery unit being unable to run and with the chance of the cannon being destroyed by dangerous terrain, it is better to keep the cannon out of cover and the tech marine in. As a multiple model unit, having the tech marine in cover means that you're guaranteed a save for the cannon despite it being right out in the open. Considerations for positioning including line of sight and defense. You cannot move the artillery up or down levels in ruins, but there's nothing preventing you from deploying it there in the first place. With 60-inch range on the cannon, it's got one of the largest threat ranges of any unit in the game. An ideal defense is placing it in a position where it cannot be targeted by the enemy at all. In the case where there's no decent terrain to settle in, placing the model behind a combat squad can give you the defense you need. Thanks to bolstered terrain, the Thunderfire Cannon combines well with defensive setup of infantry models and cover, granting them extra defenses and protection. Scouts with sniper rifles and camo cloaks get a 2+ cover save, and any marine unit can go to ground giving them the same. This could be perfect for combat squads left at home for scoring purposes. As the Thunderfire Cannon itself is quite fragile, you're likely to end up with a loose tech marine in your deployment as well. As an independent character, he can be quite useful in giving a combat squad a leadership boost, and his repair skills can be great for keeping any nearby vehicle units in good shape. He's not too bad in combat either, but with no invulnerable save and only a single wound, and targetable in close combat tuned to be an independent character, he's not going to stand up long against any units with power weapons. The Thunderfire Cannon puts out an exceptional amount of firepower for its cost with 4 blast templates. Thanks to the fact that it can hit the same target multiple times, this means that you can also stack up far more wounds on a unit that it has models for, and do a lot more damage than its other comparable choice in heavy support, the Whirlwind. It also has 3 different shell types. The first is your bread and butter, Strength 6, AP 4, wounding almost all infantry targets on a 2+, and also good enough strength to do damage against light vehicles, but it's best used against bunched up enemy units, so it's great against those forced to disembark from transports, or those trapped in their wreckage. The second shell type is a cover bypassing Strength 5 AP 6 shell, perfect for taking out units that require cover for durability, specifically Orc Looters, Pathfinders, Snipers, and well, other Thunderfire cannons. It's also a slightly better choice for shooting down armor 10 vehicles in cover, with the exception of those Dark Eldar vehicles with their 5+ invulnerable saves. The last is a Strength 4 Tremor Shell. This places the enemy units in difficult terrain for their next movement phase, and forces those already in difficult terrain to roll only a d6 for movement. Against mechanized forces where there's nothing else the cannon can actually harm, this can actually be a useful tool for trying to immobilize enemy vehicles. Even a single shell simply has to hit a vehicle to affect it, and since it affects the entire unit, entire squadrons can be put into difficult terrain as well. It's only a 1 in 6 chance, but an immobilized Land Raider can really ruin your opponent's day. These shells are also really useful against jump pack units and bikes. Bikes especially because not only does it cause dangerous terrain tests, but it also prevents bikers from turbo boosting, robbing those units of mobility and protection next turn, and preventing those very pesky last minute objective grab. And of a personal note, I've found it to be of use against those large unit of Grey Knight Terminators you see on the battlefield these days. Slowing them down to only 1 or 2 inches movements is really funny. The other advantage of variable strength shells is that you can dial down the power if you need to, especially if you're concerned about hitting your own troops or vehicles. A favourite tactic of mine is to tank shock things into nice template shapes that you can hit them with flamers, but doing this with a Thunderfire cannon in mind, you can bring down the strength of the weapon so that if you hit your own Rhino, you don't have to worry about blowing it up and giving the enemy another kill point. In summary, the Thunderfire cannon is not a game winner on its own. It's a very definition of a glass cannon, fragile but capable of putting down an exceptional amount of damage. It's priced well for what it does, and combined with other aspects of the army, it can still provide a decent bonus to your force even when the cannon is lost. Knowledge is power. Guard it well.